To the Bandano Podcast, where we're calling a spade a spade. Great to be here with you guys today. I've said this before, and I'll say it again. There's no CBA deal. The players don't want to agree to what the owners are proposing. Perfect. Grab Asia Wilson, grab Sabrina, grab Sophie, grab the superstar, the main attraction, Caitlin Clark, and let's start this league.
It's not exaggerated. For clicks, that is not a hot take. Given the current impasse between the WNBA and its players group and the lack of a collective bargaining agreement, that is a serious proposition. The league has declared that all business operations will be suspended. There is no more free agency. Contract talks have been put on hold. Additionally, the conflict between players and ownership has become so acrimonious that some are even making unimaginable suggestions. Start anew and blow everything up.
Wouldn't notice the difference. Nobody would say to themselves, oh wow, the talent has really dropped off this year. Nobody's going to be saying that. In fact, they'll be saying, wow, it's real calm this season. There's not so much complaining and whining going on this season. Start fresh with players that deserve money and with players that can push the...
This is why it's so important right now. On Friday, the prior CBA came to an end. An extension could not be reached by either party. They are currently in what is known as the status quo, where no one is able to conduct business despite the fact that the previous working conditions are still in place. While a new contract structure with significant pay increases is still being negotiated, players refuse to sign anything. Teams were willing to make qualifying offers to free agents under the expiring deal. Currently, 84 of the 86 veterans in the league are free agents who are all awaiting a new CBA before signing a contract. Revenue sharing is the point of contention. The owners proposed raising the player share from 9% to 15%. Before costs are subtracted, the participants seek 30% of the proceeds. Over the course of the agreement, the difference amounts to hundreds of millions of dollars.
Let me know what you guys think in the comments section below. Like the video and subscribe. These players are so committed to the downfall of their own league. They've tried forever to get noticed by the mainstream. In comes Caitlin Clark. Finally, they get noticed. They've tried so long to get paid what they think that they're owed. In comes Caitlin Clark. Owners actually see someone that can make them dollar signs and they say, you know what?
Let's now discuss the real changes that led to this leverage. The WNBA was losing money for 27 years. There wasn't much attendance. Television ratings hardly registered at all. There weren't many corporate sponsorships. As a show of goodwill and a long-term investment in expanding the game, NBA owners provided subsidies, which allowed the league to exist. Then in April 2024, Caitlin Clark showed there. From averaging 467 spectators per home game in 2023 to selling out every game on the road, the Indiana Fever became de facto sellouts wherever they played. The number of people watching television surged. On July 2nd, 2.3 million people watched the Fever's game against the Las Vegas Aces on ESPN, the most watched WNBA match in 23 years. Suddenly, corporate sponsors who had never been involved with women's basketball wanted to get involved. Wilson, Nike, State Farm, and Gatorade all made significant agreements.
And Women's National Basketball Players Association have reached an agreement on a moratorium for league business, sources told ESPN on Monday. The moratorium is necessary because the sides failed to reach an agreement on a new collective bargaining agreement or an extension of the previous one by Friday's deadline. The sides continue to negotiate on a new CBA amid what's become a bitter impasse as they work toward what both sides acknowledge will be a transformative deal. They remain far apart on several key issues, including chiefly what a revenue sharing system should look like. Now, is it really bitter on the owner side? Probably not. They think they're going above and beyond with some of the things that they're willing to give them.
And this is the source of the stress. Owners saw something they had never seen before when they looked at those figures. Real profitability. Not today, not in 5 years, not next year. As a result, they were prepared to make unprecedented concessions when they arrived at the bargaining table. contracts with a maximum value of more than $1 million, salaries that are over $500,000 on average. $250,000 is the minimum salary. All teams can take charter planes, better lodging, improved advantages by any historical benchmark. That is a huge leap. In 2023, the average WNBA salary was almost $113,000. That amount would be more than quadrupled under the owner's request.
Players are bitter because they think that they're owed something that they haven't earned. The players are bitter. The players have things to lose. Well, not all of the players, but the players in the negotiating rooms, Breanna Stewart and Nafisa Collier. They would love it if WNBA folds. Unrivaled gets some players. Maybe that league turns to 5-on-5. They already see a future for Unrivaled. Breanna Stewart earlier this weekend said, oh man, it's so hard to compartmentalize. I mean, after the games, then I got to go and take emails and phone calls and take places on this and take places on that. Wouldn't it just be easier if that league didn't exist anymore? That's what she's saying to herself.
However, the players group is making the following claim. They claim that Caitlin Clark's ability to attract in customers' accounts for nearly all of those revenue estimates. Additionally, since the league is marketing the players as a group, if one player is accountable for producing that much value, then the entire player pool should receive a larger share. They cite the NBA, where players get half of their earnings from the sport. They use the NWSL as an example, when soccer players bargained for up to 50%. They want to know why basketball players should accept 15% when sportsmen in every other major professional league receive at least 40%. The WNBA still has enormous overhead costs, the owners argue. Infrastructure improvements, new areas, and expansion fees. They contend that half of the league's teams, particularly the smaller market teams without Caitlin Clark, would go bankrupt if 30% of income was taken before expenses.
Massive increases in compensation is still being bargained. All but 2 of the league's veterans and free agents this offseason in anticipation of a new CBA. The moratorium will halt those initial stages of free agency in which teams would seek to deliver qualifying offers and core designations to players. Just start fresh. Just start fresh. Call up Caitlin Clark and say, hey, Cece, we're moving on. You want to play in the WNBA? You could be our first player. Call Sophie. Hey, Sophie, you want to come play in the WNBA? You'll be our first player. What are the steps to just tear that up and start new? Seriously, fans won't care. Let me rephrase. The fans that actually move the needle won't care.
And the resentment he speaks of is now personal rather than just financial. Nanika Aguam, the president of the Players Association, and Breanna Stewart, the vice president, have expressed their displeasure with the owner's offer on social media. They have presented it as an extension of the league's long-standing practice of undervaluing its players. According to talks with a number of seasoned players, the owners are attempting to take advantage of Caitlin Clark's fame without fairly rewarding the players who laid the groundwork for her. Reporters have been informed by ownership sources that they believe the players are negotiating in bad faith and that the association is making demands that they know cannot be fulfilled. Perhaps because certain members of the leadership have financial stakes in competitors. The new 3-on-3 league Unrivaled, which pays elite players far more for a shorter season, was co-founded by Breanna Stewart. Unrivaled becomes the top women's basketball product, and some owners secretly question whether Stewart truly wants the WNBA to fold.
At this point, many of those folks are saying, just lock them out. End this nonsense. Shut this league down. We are officially at the point where this bargaining and negotiating, it's turned into a pileup on the side of the road that people are now paying attention to. They don't really have an invested interest in it. They're just paying attention to because it's a pileup on the side of the road. This league is it's losing steam. It's losing steam by the day. If interest levels were here when Caitlin Clark got here, Dude, they're here. They might even be off the screen now. If interest levels were here when Caitlin Clark arrived, they've fallen off so fast. People don't even want to watch anything that doesn't have to do with Caitlin Clark. No one cares about Unrivaled. No one cared about the playoffs. No one cared about the finals. Oh, but the ratings. Yeah, but the ratings were inflated. Nobody paid attention. You look at Caitlin Clark games, you look at Indiana Fever games, and you look at non-Caitlin Clark games. There it is. Said it. Right there. The league has lost momentum, and it's all because of the players. Unwillingness to negotiate. Unwillingness to compromise. The owners have done their part. And as far as I'm concerned, move on without the old guard. Hire whatever attorney you can to make that possible and just do it. If not, shut it down.
The moratorium he is discussing is important. Free agency would have opened on January 21st under normal conditions. Offers would be made by teams. Contracts would be signed by players. Rather, everything is frozen. Negotiations with free agents are not possible for the Chicago Sky. Qualifying offers cannot be extended by the Los Angeles Sparks. Players who had intended to change teams are now in a precarious situation. This is the reason why the timing is so troublesome. Early May is when training camps are expected to begin. May is when the season is expected to begin. Teams won't have enough time to assemble rosters if a CBA agreement isn't reached by mid-March. The entire season may be at risk if talks continue into April. In order to keep everyone at the table, the League and the Players Association did agree to extend the moratorium. However, sources on both sides characterize the talks as hostile and fruitless. The difference between the two positions hasn't gotten any closer in a week. It's not as weird as it sounds, so let's take this nuclear option seriously. The legal foundation for employing substitute players is in place at the initial hearing. In professional sports, management may announce an impasse and make their final offer when talks break down. Players are able to strike. If the union rejects the offers, owners have the option to lock them out and hire new employees to keep things running. In 1997, it took place in the NFL. The players launched an offensive. The proprietors brought in substitutes. Before the union gave in and accepted management's offer, they played games with substitute players for 3 weeks. It took place in Major League Baseball's owners employed substitute players during spring training in 1995, but a court order prevented them. Could the WNBA use it? Yes, in theory. Caitlin Clark, Sabrina Ionko, Paige Buchers, and a few other marquee names with contracts far above market rates could be offered by the league. The rosters could then be filled with replacement players, foreign professionals, former college standouts who were left off of WNBA rosters, and players from other leagues who were willing to cross the picket line. Would fans be able to tell the difference in skill? Of course. The level of play would drastically decline. However, this is the computation that ownership would be performing. Do casual viewers who recently began watching because Caitlin Clark is concerned about the distinction between a replacement-level athlete and a seasoned WNBA rotation player? Or are they merely interested in seeing Caitlin Clark play hoops? They might not care as much as you might expect, based on the television ratings. Every other game on the schedule was overshadowed by the Fever's viewership even when they played without injured stars. Viewers turned off the broadcast when Caitlin Clark missed the fourth quarter in blowouts. According to the research, a sizable percentage of the new audience is there for individual players rather than the league as a whole. Would this approach genuinely be effective in the long run? Most likely not. It would take place in public relations catastrophe. The Players Association would bring accusations of unfair labor practices. Instead of being linked to a labor conflict, sponsors may decide to withdraw. Supporters who value women's basketball as a sport as opposed to only as entertainment would rebel. However, as a short-term negotiation strategy, it has leverage because the threat may be sufficient to persuade the Players Association to return to the table with a more practical offer. The negotiation's entire dynamic is altered if ownership can convincingly claim that they would prefer to work with replacement players than accept 30% revenue sharing. This is the unpleasant reality that no one wants to publicly acknowledge. The distribution of leverage in this negotiation is uneven. Although they don't, the Players Association is handling this as though they have equal bargaining power. Approximately 75% of the league's current revenue rise may be attributed to 5 players. Individual leverage is significantly lower for the remaining 95 participants. You could leave the WNBA tomorrow and accept a contract with Unrivaled or a European league for a higher salary if you're Caitlin Clark. The same applies if you're Breanna Stewart. However, you need the WNBA more than it needs you if you're a role player earning the league minimum. That is the harsh truth of the economy. For this reason, some experts believe that the Players Association may have demanded 30%, overplaying their hand. Because what will the union do if the owners call that bluff and put their 15% offer into effect? Keep yourself out of North America's sole major professional women's basketball league. This league's 2024 momentum is already waning. No one watched the playoffs with the same fervor as they did the regular season. Unrivaled is receiving some attention, but not nearly as much as the WNBA did during the Fever's tenure. The longer this negotiation goes on, the more casual fans leave, which is why this is such a crucial time. The WNBA currently has a window of opportunity to profit from previously unheard of interest. However, that window is closing. Each week in the absence of fans forget about the league for a week during resolution. Corporate sponsors begin to doubt their investment every month when there are no games. Who blinks first then? Will the players lock in generational wealth for the next 10 years by accepting something more in line with the owner's offer? Or should they stick to 30% and run the risk of a work stoppage that could ruin everything they've created? Because this is what everyone must comprehend. Money is not the only issue here. This concerns the WNBA's ability to continue operating as a profitable enterprise. And there isn't a decent response to that question at the moment because there is no CBA, no free agency, and no obvious way ahead. The league that at last gained popularity in America may be on the verge of disintegrating.